Today we are in the University of Applied Science in Fulda, and I am talking to Collett Wanjugu Döppner, who is a teacher at this university. She's been teaching the course of international competence and international communication, which I was a part of in the semester, and so we came to the idea to talk about culture and go deeper into the meaning of culture and also her expertise on this topic. Thank you, Collett, for being here with me today. And would you like to say some things about you and tell us who you are?
Yes, I would like that. Thank you, first of all, for having me here. So, like Sita, you said, my name is Collett Wanjugu Döppner. Yeah, and I have been lecturing or teaching in this area of international, it used to be called intercultural competence. It's now changing. We need to change the wording a little bit. It's more transcultural communication and competence for several years now. And it's one of my favorite things to teach because it's not only the theory part that interests me, it's also part of my life. I'm living in a different culture than I was born in, and so it makes my daily experience also very transcultural, and that's why I like teaching this topic a lot.
Very interesting. Yeah, you have a background coming and growing up in Kenya. You did your bachelor's degree there, and then you came to Germany to do the master. How was that transition for you? And would you like to say a little bit about the starting of your education in Kenya, and then what made you come to Germany?
Oh, wow, that's a lot to talk about. So I actually was born and raised in Kenya, mainly in Nairobi, the main city, the capital city of Kenya. And I did all my learning, all my education there until I was 24 years old. So I went from primary to high school, and then I went to the university. And that's where I actually met my husband. That's the reason I changed cultures. We met at the university. He was studying in a university in Germany, and I was studying at the Nairobi University, and we met at a students' conference. Yeah, and things just developed, and at one point we decided we didn't want the long distance relationship anymore. We want to try living in one place at the same time and for a longer period. And it was just a choice for me to try the German culture, to come here and see if it works out for both of us. And if not, then we would consider going back to Kenya. And so that's how I landed in Germany, in Fulda, because my husband comes from Fulda. And you already asked the question, how was the beginning here? And this is a really interesting question because it was a mixture of feelings. It was euphoria of being here, new culture, new environment, new people around me, new place to live in, but also a really huge challenge to learn the German language, which is for me one of the most difficult languages I learned. I speak several languages, and German was for me one of the languages I needed to invest a lot of time learning, and it took quite some time and some stress and some tears in between and a lot of homesickness to get where I wanted to be. And then one of the consequences of me learning German and wanting to work in that language was to do my master's studies, because I thought, okay, if I have learned the language, if I want to be able to work in it, what can I do? I had already had my bachelor studies in Kenya. And so the next level was to do a master's. And I did it in German and English to make it easier for me. It was a master course offered here at the University of Fulda. And it was a really good stepping point into this German environment, being able to learn the language, work with it, and then proceed to the next level. And so that's how I ended up being in Fulda. And later on, the working experience started. While I was still studying, I worked as an assistant to my professor. He was teaching the intercultural communication class, and I worked as his assistant. And I kind of got used to being with him while lecturing or while doing things, preparing classes. And so, yeah, I kind of flowed into the area of lecturing that way. Yeah.
Since we are already on this part of topic of your personal experiences, first, was it already clear for you that you always wanted to work in this intercultural or transcultural context? And how does it connect with the experiences that you made in the contrast between Kenyan culture and German culture?
That's a really good question. I think, if I'm honest, I never imagined I would become a lecturer. I never imagined I would work in this intercultural, transcultural area. It was just one topic that I had during my master's studies. We also had an area that had to do with European politics, and this for me was also very interesting. And I remember while studying, I imagined I would want to work for an international corporation like the UN. That would have been my first choice, or to go into diplomacy, because I realized there are some parts of politics that I really liked, and together with culture and cultural competence, then it works very well to go into diplomacy with this. And this is what I thought I would end up doing. But then, like I said, while working as an assistant to my professor, then I got into the area of teaching, and I discovered my passion in teaching then. I discovered, it's a nice thing to have some information, have some theories, have some methods, and work with a group of people and transfer this in a certain way. And this was nice. It was a really nice experience, and I started considering this. And then somehow over the years, I just got more and more offers to teach and more. And then I never really considered moving away from this. And I think teaching is a very noble profession. It's a nice thing to do, and to work with a group of people that appreciate what you're doing and give you also back something as a teacher is a really nice thing. And so I ended up sticking and staying in this area.
Speaking a bit more about your different experiences with your home culture and the German culture, what do you feel are main differences? How have you been influenced by both of them? And I think I also read an interview that you were doing with the AWO, and there you said that you feel like in Kenya you have more of this collectivistic view, and that you support each other a lot. And then in Germany you felt like this was not happening so much in the normal plane of society, and you more had to look for the spaces where this kind of support was taking place. Can you tell us more about these differences that you experienced, and maybe also commonalities if you found something?
This is an interesting area because it can get very controversial, and I try to be a bit careful about categorizing the different cultures and putting them into boxes, but I will just try to show it from my own point of view, my own perspective. And what I said in this one interview a long time ago didn't change much, but the understanding of it has changed. So when I came to Germany at the beginning, I had a feeling of being alone most of the time. Not lonely. I wasn't lonely because I had people around me, but the idea of being in a group of people, of maybe friends or family that do many things together very often, was not what I experienced in Germany. So you do have that, and I see it also now in the friends that I have made over the years here in Germany, but also in the family I am in, that we do meet as a family. But I have a feeling that the motivation behind it is different than in Kenya. In Kenya, we are closer in this group. So like my family, and when I'm in Kenya, all my cousins will come and visit and stay for a long time, and it will be like a huge party. Of course, it's a special occasion because I haven't been there for a long time, but I also have a group of friends, and we keep contact through WhatsApp. And when I'm in Kenya, we will do a lot of things, but also in this WhatsApp group, there's a lot of activity. There are updates. Like recently, one of my best friends in Kenya lost her dad. And this WhatsApp group was like the main means of communication, updating the information. And they were meeting every evening to make sure that this friend of ours was not alone. So, of course, I could only be there through telephone and writing messages to her every day. That was my way of being there. And it's a different kind of being together. And this is what I meant then by this collective thinking. It goes a little bit deeper. So, for example, a good example is when you lose a person that's close to you. In Kenya, people will come, many people, and they will not leave you alone. So during the process of the mourning, when you're preparing for the funeral, you're never alone. Every day there are people cooking for you, helping you to think about the memories. You're allowed to cry. You're allowed to be everything. You're not alone. And I always had a feeling, for example, here, if a person dies, it's just my perspective. The person is somewhere. We all know this person is dead. And then you wait for the day of the funeral. Then you go to church, bury the person, and that's it. And in Kenya, it's totally different. It's really every day there's this. It's like you're trying to tell the person, we will fill in the space. Of course, not totally, but we will help you not be alone. And so there were many situations like this that I felt the togetherness here is structured in a different way than the togetherness I was used to in Kenya. And so I did have moments where I needed more of the Kenyan togetherness, and it was more difficult to acquire here because the mentality behind it is different. And now I have managed to create a hybrid culture. I do have friends who kind of are like that. When they come to my place, we have this togetherness. There's a lot of laughing and cooking and singing and dancing, and just the way I would do it in Kenya. But of course, we don't do it as often as I would do in Kenya. And so you have the different things that are similar and different at the same time. And also, I can tell you from a family tradition I started when I was in Germany, because I told you in Kenya there was this a lot of collective action. So eating together, meeting as often as possible. And I remember when I moved in with my husband, we got married and we had our first child, and we would sit almost every day and eat, the three of us. And I missed something more. In Kenya, the families are bigger. So you have maybe the grandma or an aunt who is living with you, or a cousin who is there. And I remember asking my husband if we could start a tradition where my parents-in-law, who also live in this city, would eat with us at least once a week. And we tried it out. It was strange for them at the beginning, having to see each other every Friday and always on time. And I would be cooking. We named it the pasta day. So we always made a pasta. And I remember researching and buying books. And sometimes my husband would cook when he was there because sometimes he was working. And this turned out to be a tradition that we have now been having for over 20 years, the time I have lived in Germany, and they love it a lot. They really don't miss it. And now we have a period where my father-in-law cannot walk up the stairs to come to our apartment because he's a bit older now. And we kept the tradition of Friday eating together, but we go to a restaurant on a Friday. And it's really if one of us says nothing, the other person will call. Even my kids, they always, so are we meeting on Friday at around 1 o'clock? And it's become a tradition. And for me, this was a way to cope with what was missing for me in Germany. So I brought something from Kenya, integrated it somehow in the German culture, and everybody around really liked it. And I think this is a way that you can cope with these differences in culture that are not fitting exactly to what your idea is, and you just create something new that works.
Thank you for sharing these insights. And I love the Friday ritual that you have. And for me, with a German background, I can also really relate to kind of missing the collective spirit in German culture, just in the way we started to organize ourselves here. For example, it's very well known that loneliness is an issue here, and in Western cultures in general, high individualization. And it feels so hard to just meet for dinner with your friends or to meet for a coffee or to have a walk, because your mind is so occupied with to-dos and with not wanting to step over someone's boundaries or being afraid that you're overwhelmed with having too many appointments, and then you eventually don't do the things that would do good for you, like being social, like having regular meetings just for eating together or doing the groceries. I don't know what. It's just the very normal things to share life together and not being on your own with everything. And this is something that I also find really challenging. And I like that you found a way to cope with that. And maybe it was also something that is more known for you in your upbringing, that you spend a lot of time with people. And it's something I feel like Germans still have to get used to again, to have this collectivity, and that it's something that can do good to us and not to harm our career or harm our business plan or not overwhelm us, but actually is maybe serving us in a deeper way.
Maybe I can say something about that, because when we talk about the different cultures, we tend to mainly think about the differences, and then we take it to a level where also the differences are seen to be critical, and most of the time critically bad. But that's actually not true. I think every culture has its own way of doing things. And with its own way of doing things, there are some pros and contras, so advantages and disadvantages that come with them. And I normally never categorize a culture as bad or as good. I just say it has just found its own way of doing things. And these things might work to a certain extent or until a certain extent. And then there's still a part that maybe needs, I don't know, not even improving is not the word, that may be optimizing. It needs some optimizing and so on. And I think, so growing up in a collectivistic culture has so many good things. So it means you're hardly ever alone, especially in bad times. This is a really, really good thing. For some people, it can be a really bad thing, because sometimes you never really have time for yourself and you're really constantly surrounded by people. But this is not how you need to imagine it. Also, it doesn't mean that people in collectivistic cultures are never alone. Of course, they will find moments where they can be alone, but they prefer to do many things together, especially things that are challenging. When people need help, it's just easier. And the automatic result of that is that you see, that is my experience, that you have less cases of people that might be depressed because of that, because they always have an outlet for their emotions. They always have friends they will talk to, family members who are close to them, who will see, oh, there's something that's not right, should we talk about it? Or even if you don't want to talk about it, you're not alone. Let's just eat something together, sit here together, and then you feel maybe your emotions are being taken care of in a certain way. And the challenging thing in a culture that's so highly individualistic like Germany is that people tend to spend a lot of time alone, which is in many ways a good thing because they're more effective, they're more self-reliant and self-determined and so on. But the dangers of what you mentioned, loneliness, not having a person to automatically talk to when you're feeling down. I always have a feeling in such a culture, the hurdle of when you feel there's something not right with me, to getting a person to talk to is so high, because you will have to get the person, you'll have to see if you trust the person, you will have to introduce the topic, you'll have to see if this person can cope with it. So by the time you really get there, it's such a huge thing that you have to go through that many people just don't do it until it's too late. And that is why we find that in Germany you need more people, therapists who deal with that. In Kenya we do have some therapists, but the number compared to Germany is very, very low. And I always said my therapists in Kenya were my friends. Now, I never needed a therapist when I was in Kenya. I would just tell my friends, oh guys, something horrible happened, or I don't feel good, and they would immediately all come together and say, okay, what can we do? We're here for you. And then after that you don't need. Of course, I'm not saying that it's not important to go to a therapist, or when you have mental issues, it's always important to seek a professional, even in Kenya, even in a culture. But I'm saying that there is a level of this daily things, maybe problems we have and challenges that can be taken care of if we had a more collectivistic way of thinking, that we take each other by the hand and support each other and just try to take care of the daily challenges. That's what I mean now. And of course, it's always important to visit a therapist if you feel you really need one, in any culture. So this is not what I was trying to say. Yeah,
I agree. And I feel like we're already going really deep somewhere. Maybe we will come back to that. And I feel it would be nice to speak a little bit about the deeper basics of maybe just asking ourselves for a moment, what is culture actually? And why do humans develop culture? And why do we need this? What is your perspective on that?
This is always an interesting and challenging question to answer, because there have been very, very many different definitions of culture, trying to understand what culture is. And my idea of culture is, of course, just one in 1,000, I would say. And for me, culture, and I will go away from the national culture. This is normally what is on the top of the culture list. When we think about cultures, we'll think of the national cultures like the German, the Kenyan culture, the Chinese culture, or whatever. And for me, culture is that's just one part of it, but it's much more. Culture for me is everything that brings a group of people together that have the same interests, that share the same beliefs or similar. They don't have to be exactly the same. They need to be similar. For me, culture gives this group of people that are sharing similar interests, ideas, beliefs, it gives them orientation. So it gives them, so this is how we're gonna deal with this and this. So it gives them like a kind of an orientation to deal with everyday life. It gives them some tools in the hand. It gives them identity. Identity is a really big thing in culture, because it gives this group of people sharing the same beliefs or similar beliefs, it gives them the feeling of identity. And when we go back to human psychology, identity is very, very important. We all want to belong somewhere. We want to have a feeling we share something with somebody else, and this something is special and unique, and it makes us a group that's recognizable, and this is culture. So it's the orientation, it's this shared belief and shared orientation and interest and so on, and it gives the identity. And I would use one of the analogies I use when teaching. For me, a culture is like a map that helps you navigate through your life. So it gives you the tools to know, what do I eat? What do I like to eat? What language am I using to communicate with other people? What do I think about different things? And how do I react to them? So like the basic instinct we have of emotion is shaped into a certain way by culture. So how do we react to certain things, to problems, to challenges, to good things? Now, are we gonna dance when we are happy? Are we gonna laugh out loud when we feel good emotions? Are we gonna cry and show these emotions when we are sad? Or are we gonna hide and not want to show this emotion? These are all things that culture gives us. And actually, for me, culture is just a way that guiding all those basic instincts we have from biology in a certain direction, and together with identity and shared interest, then you have the idea of culture. And like I said, this is just one in 1,000. And normally I could talk for hours about culture, but in a nutshell, that's what I would say culture is. And of course, knowing that it's not only the national culture we're talking about other different groups of cultures, subcultures, everything that brings people together.
Thank you. If I want to relate to that and put it together with the mental health topics that we've been also discussing a little bit before, with the example of how different cultures deal with emotions. Some express them, some keep them for themselves, or speak about them with very close people, or only with professionals, and so on and so forth. So the way they deal with it is somehow programmed or imprinted by the cultural socialization that they had. And so it seems, okay, we have this map, but it seems like sometimes the tools work very well for the situations that we are in. And sometimes the map somehow doesn't really fit with the reality that we are in, or it's leading us not really to the best place. Maybe we have to ask ourselves, does the culture that we have really serve us, or are we serving the culture that we were imprinted with because of the pathways that we are now used to? But is it really doing the best to us? And what is your take on that? And how can we maybe differentiate that?
That's a good question. I think it goes both ways. It's like a ping pong. No? So we serve culture and culture serves us, because without us, there would be no culture. Culture is made up of the people and then the beliefs that are shared and so on. And so it goes both ways. And like you said, through socialization, or the way we call it in culture, we call it enculturation, people in that culture learn to do things in a certain way. So they learn the language, they learn how to react to different situations, they learn what to eat, when to eat, with whom to eat, they learn how to build relationships, how to transfer knowledge, so education systems and so on. And so you can see that all this is happening within the culture, but it's happening with the people. And so it's a give and take. So culture is giving us. And anyway, I mean, culture is not an invisible thing that is instilled into the people. It's actually happening with the people. So through traditions, for example, it's passed on from generation to generation. And so I think one cannot exist without the other. They need each other. The critical thing that you mentioned, you asked, is it still real? My idea on this is that culture is not a stiff thing. No? Culture is changing. Now, it's changing because we people also change. We need to change to fit the circumstances. And for me, most of the problems in culture come up when culture needs to change and it doesn't. Or maybe a certain group of people, most of the time that's what's happening, a certain group of people do not want to change because maybe they are afraid of the changes. Change is always something that people fear, because it's the unknown. You don't know what's going to happen in the future. So when a certain group of people do not want to change and some want to change, then you have the problems. And a part of us human beings is to feel safe. Again, this going back to the instinct level, to feel safe. And what makes us feel most safe is something that we know. Change is always something we don't know. Unless you're open for it, you're maybe adventurous and so on, most of the people would prefer to keep things the way they are because they know them already. There's nothing threatening in that. They know how to navigate or maneuver around those things. So it's comfortable. No? And everything that's comfortable is nice for us. No? An uncomfortable situation is always, you need a lot of energy. And this is what creates a lot of problems. And what I know, there's even a theory about a real culture is what the people are really doing every day, not what they're thinking about, undertaking things they're doing. And the ideal culture is what they think it should be. And sometimes there's a real conflict between these two. So maybe the ideal culture will say something like, it's important for younger people to respect older people. That's the ideal situation. But then you have maybe the younger generation saying, yes, but older people need to earn this respect before we can show it to them. It shouldn't come automatically. And in there's a little conflict because maybe the older people will automatically expect this respect without even maybe earning it. And younger people will say, no, show us why we need to respect you, and then we'll do it. And so you see, the real culture is having a conflict with the ideal culture. And there's so many examples you can give in this area. And for me, this is the problem. We need to reevaluate what are the things in our culture that are still useful, that are still working, that still serve us. That was the question you asked. So what are those things that are worth keeping because they still serve us, so that we people in that culture can continue living in a good way with each other without these little conflicts between each other, between the generations, or between different groups of people. And this is where I see the problem. We need to think of culture as a changing thing. Culture needs to change because the times are changing, and if it doesn't do that, then it creates a lot of friction between the people, and then you do see that some things are not working as they should. And this is my idea on that.
Thank you for sharing your insights and thoughts on that. I like how you were illustrating that culture is nothing stiff, but it's something that is always in a process of change and adaptation and reflection. And unless some are really, really resistant to the change, it's a normal process of adapting to the circumstances and finding what works well. Of course, sometimes it works better than other times. In your class that I was sharing with you, we were also discussing about the different levels of a human being, and that we all have a very basic level that we share globally with basic needs and the way our physiology works, that we all have emotions, that we all have physical needs, the need for safety and so on. Then on top of that, there's the frame, the space of cultural socialization, where we can have differences in an intercultural context. And this is where we are shaped by our environment. And then on top, we have some individual traits and interests and things that make us kind of unique and that are maybe not so influenced by our environment. This model kind of works in a simplified way for all humans. And still we developed so different pathways of how we deal with life in collectives. And I wonder what you think that would be a life-serving culture, something that really serves these beings that we are in all these kind of levels that we were discussing, and especially meeting these basic needs of safety, of connection, physical well-being, and both rest and activity, belonging, and so on. And how do you imagine a life-serving culture?
I thought about this question quite a bit before we met. You had given me the questions before, and I will try to answer it in the way I think, without sounding too esoteric, I hope. But I think a life-serving culture is where a culture and the people in it live in harmony with each other. And I'm not just talking about the emotional or feelings level. I'm also talking about harmony with nature and with the environment, harmony with the resources that we have, because we have to remember each person is living in an environment, and in this environment we have to adapt to that environment. So in Kenya, for example, I didn't experience winter. In Germany, there is winter. There are the 4 seasons with the differences in them, different foods and things like that. So I'm talking about thinking of how can I live in the perfect, maybe not perfect, but in the most harmony with the resources, with the environment, and with the people around me. And this means, first of all, we need to think of nature. We have a huge problem with nature everywhere in the world. So how can we do things that are good for the nature so that nature in return can be good to us? Because we know if we destroy nature, we will die eventually. Yeah? So for me, it's actually a very simple thing. Now, I'm thinking if nature is giving us something, then why can't we give back to nature? But since we are talking about also culture involves people who are living together in an environment. It also means thinking about the person living next to you. So what does this person need? And what do I need, and what can we give to each other? And for me, this is a really huge thing that you see in the way we communicate in each other, in the way we deal with conflicts. And at the moment, we're living in our world where this is totally out of balance. So instead of communicating in a good way and finding solutions that are good for each one of us, we're going for the bigger one who can shout louder, who can run faster, who can shoot faster. This is our way of solving problems. And this is not the thing that's going to help us solve our problems. And so for me, a serving culture, or a culture that serves people, is a culture where it's giving resources or things to the people, and the people in turn give something back to the culture. And this also means giving back to each other. And for me, it doesn't mean that we should live in a world that has no conflict. No, I mean, conflict is part of life. Conflict is a result of having different mindsets, different ways of thinking, doing things, mentalities. And at the end, it's to find a solution that kind of works for each other. So conflicts are important because they help us question things, and they help us find creative and good, or I would say creative ways of finding solutions. So my idea is not to eliminate conflict. No, my idea is to find good and creative ways of living with each other in harmony and with nature in harmony without having to destroy each other. And this is a way, I would say, it's a good way of serving culture that could be sustainable. I mean, if we continue the way we are doing things now, I think we won't have much of culture and nature to live from in the next few years. And so we need to rethink our way of doing things. And I would like to just take an example that comes from my culture. A long time ago, in Kenya, we have over 45 different ethnic groups. And they come together and form the Kenyan culture. And this is also another good example of this collectivism I was talking about. So it means you have different people coming together and forming one thing together. No? So this is already a bigger example of this collectivism. And my ethnic group is the Kikuyu. And the Kikuyus, a long time ago, now still in a smaller way, but hundreds maybe of years ago, they lived around the mountain area in Kenya. And they believed, for example, that their God lived on the mountain. And it was very important to live in harmony with the nature. So the tree, for example, was a holy plant in the Kikuyu ethnic group. It was important to offer sacrifices to the god, to be thankful for harvest, or to be thankful for the food or whatever nature had given us. So it was a give and take. So it wasn't just a take, which we are seeing, unfortunately, today. It was also a giving back and saying thank you and being grateful for the things that nature provided us. And for me, this is just a good example that maybe died now after many things happened: colonialization, globalization, cultures changing. Many of these things have gotten lost. But this is a good thing to remember, that our ancestors would do things like this. They were grateful people. They wouldn't just take, they would give back, they would give sacrifices and be thankful for what they had gotten from nature. And I think this could be a thing that we need to think about today in a culture where it's just about consuming and not really giving back to nature, to think that this could be something that might save us, because at the moment we are on the way of destroying many things that are important to us.
I think this does not sound esoteric at all. I like that you brought examples from your home culture, and as you also mentioned colonialism, I feel like this part of history really influenced a lot on old knowledge that we had globally. Actually, I mean, there were indigenous cultures everywhere, also in Europe, before the colonialists started first doing it in their home region and then spreading it all over. It feels like a lot got lost, but some of us still remember, and there are people who want to follow their kind of work in a decolonized way, or try to figure out how can decolonization work, how can we work on bringing back more life-serving decolonized perspectives into culture. And the last interview that I did was with a philosopher, and we were also discussing the relation to nature. And he said we could go a step further in our understanding of ourselves, that it's not us and nature, but it's just nature, because basically we are that. We are a part of it. We are not really divided from it, because if it dies, we die. We are in this constant relation of it, and we are expression of it. And I think this images that you were describing about a more life-serving culture, it includes this broader understanding of what it means to be alive and to be us, and that it's not just a taking, but it's this overall connection. So of course, we cannot change overnight. We cannot just bring it all back and then tomorrow it's perfect. What do you think? How can culture be changed? How can it be influenced on different levels, maybe in the personal space, but also in the more collective realm?
How can culture be changed? This is a good question. First of all, I think culture gives us signals that we need to change. Let's take a good example. If one natural resource runs out, then we can't take it anymore. And so we have to adjust our needs to continue living without this natural resource. And I think there's an automatic thing in us that shows us that we need to change when the environment change. For example, climate change. Now we're having many issues with climate change, and when this confronts us, we automatically change. And so I think, first of all, it's really important to be observant of what our nature, which signals our nature is giving us, to be able to create the changes that we need to have. And before that, you mentioned something very interesting, which I agree with, that it's important to stop thinking of culture and us as separate. It's actually the same thing. We are part of culture. And I think with this instinct that we have in us, when we feel things are not working the way they should be working, when we see there are more people suffering because of the things that we are doing in not the right way. These are all signals, for us that we need to change. When we see that there are more conflicts, I feel that, for example, now that there seem to be more conflicts, not only on an national level, but also between the people, that the people are more aggressive in the way they speak about their ideas and their needs. For me, this is a sign that things need to change. It means there is something that's missing in the harmony I talked about before. I said it's important to be in harmony with each other, with nature, with the things around us, and there are always signals. If you talk to a person and the reaction is really harder than you expected it to be, then this is a question you should ask yourself. Why is this reaction so much harder than I would have expected it to be? So I think we have inbuilt signals in us that make us feel things that need to be changed, but we also are intelligent enough to see the things around us. Nature is changing, plants maybe are dying, insects are dying. In the sea, we have a lot of plastic. We won't be able to swim anymore. Our seas are too warm. This is not good for the fish and all the living organisms in the sea, and we know if they die at one point we will also start dying. So I think that there are so many signs around us that tell us we need to change. We only need to listen to them. We need to open our eyes even more and see this sign, listen to them, listen to what the people we are talking to, think about the different areas. It's not only nature, but since I told you, culture and the people around or in it belong also to nature. So it's everything that's going on there. We need to think about our political ideas even more. I don't think we should react to things the way we reacted 50 years ago. We need new ways of confronting problems, but also education. Education is a really powerful tool to transfer good ideas. Why can't we change there? Why can't we change the system in such a way that we give our children useful tools that will make them know how to deal with the world as it is today? At the moment, we are not really doing that. Media is a huge thing. So what are we transferring through media? Horrible things many times where you think, oh my goodness. All these things are signs. They're signs that show us we need to change, and it's not one person that's gonna come and tell us that's the list of things you need to change. It's all around us, and it's been happening for many years now, and we only need to open our ears more, open our eyes even more, and we will see all the things that we need to change. And of course, listen more with our hearts than only with the ears, because this is also the thing that I feel that is missing. We might be hearing things, but if your heart is close to these things, then nothing will come out of it. And so so many signs that we are not listening to, and this is a mistake that we are making.
I guess you were addressing now a lot of the systemic aspects on how we can change, which are, of course, really, really important and necessary that we manage to change our direction in this collective realm. And you were speaking a lot to these like really global issues, which can feel terribly overwhelming for individuals at some point. And I think many people feel very powerless and numbed, like they cannot really do anything, maybe feel like whatever they do, it makes no sense, they have no influence. So if you want to contribute to changing culture, changing something on a very micro level at first, how is your approach to that?
Okay. Again, hoping I won't sound very esoteric, I think it's important to remember, even if not all of us are living in a collectivistic culture, we are still all connected to each other. So on a certain level, an energy level, we're connected to each other. And a really simple example, you come out of your house, you go onto the street, you're in a normal mood, and you meet somebody who you don't know, and this person greets you with a bright smile and says good morning. What happens to you? Automatically your mood changes, right? Or on the other, no, let's turn the coin. I wake up in the morning, I go outside my door, I see a person, I say hello to this person smiling, and this person looks back at me with no smile and just passes and goes. Again, this would change my mood. For me, this is a really simple example to show that we are all connected at some level, energetic level with each other, whether we want it or not. And that means if I'm having a good day and another person is having a bad day, we do have maybe the power to influence each other on a certain level, just maybe by doing little things, helping each other out. What I know is that what we do on a personal level can work as a domino effect. If many people, each person is doing something on their own, but it will accumulate and give the big effect through the big energy. And this is what I believe. I think that big things, big results never begin from the top. They never begin being big. They always begin in the small sense. And so if a person is feeling helpless and numb and feel like they cannot change anything, I think this is the wrong way to think about things, because we are connected to each other. And if each person in their own way, in their own small way, just takes a little step at a time, you don't need to have the big step, do the big thing, just do the little step at a time, take the little step at a time and do the little thing as much as your energy level can allow you to do, because we also have different energy levels at different times. It's important also to consider that. I think it will help. And what also helps me is to know that most of the time I'm not alone in this feeling. So if I am having a really bad day, things are not working, I don't want to get out of bed or whatever, it's not just me. There is another person somewhere maybe having a similar experience and also feeling like this. And it's important to know we are not alone in our feelings. Emotions are our signals that show us how things are going. So if you're feeling low level, feeling helpless, that you can't do anything, this is a sign that something needs to change and to work in a different way. And the most important power that we have is the intrinsic power we have within us. And this is something that nobody from outside can really instill on you. It needs to come from inside you. And if you know that, first of all, acknowledge your feelings. It's okay once in a while to feel low, to feel powerless and so on, but it's also important to get up, dust yourself off, put your crown back on and do something. It doesn't have to be the big step. It can be just a little step at a time. And it can be in waves. It means one day you'll be down, another day you'll be on top, another day you'll be down again. So it will go up and down. It doesn't mean you will stay on top the whole time, but it also means you won't stay down the whole time. No? And it's important to believe in the magic of the collective energy. Each person just doing something little, a step at a time, and believing in it can create a bigger whole that's more powerful than we imagine it to be. And this would maybe be my way of dealing with it.
It's beautiful. I would still like to speak to two more aspects. First, in addition to what you were saying now, this kind of grassroots movement that everyone can start and it builds a collective momentum. Do you see, because these are other topics that are main interest in the podcast, do you have experience, or what is your own perspective on the role of art, with which I mean basically any kind of creative activity, and also mindfulness in a broader sense? Do you see which kind of roles these aspects can play in this culture shift?
Maybe in art I'm not that experienced, but even though, yes, I kind of, because also music and dance is a kind of an art. That's my area, and I dance hip hop. And my daughter also dances hip hop much, much better than me. I gave her most of my genes, I think. No, just kidding. And I notice when I dance hip hop in a group of people, that the magic in the dance is amazing. Not everybody listening to the same song and moving in the same way, and then really dancing to this. Or when I watch my daughter dancing with her group of girls and going for competitions, and the energy that's coming out of there it's really amazing. And this is this collective energy I was talking about. It is there. We need to find it, and you can do it with art, with any kind of art. And so I think it's there. I have experienced it, or I experience it once and once again. And what I like about art is that art is a beautiful thing. It's something that brings joy. It's colorful in different ways. It brings people together, and this could be actually an easy way to make people come together and have a collective energy to do good. So I am for it. I'm definitely for it. The other side, the mindfulness one, I think this is something that's already happening, and it's been happening for years. We see now in many westernized countries that the idea of meditation has become a really big thing. And of course, meditating alone is a very good thing, but I don't know if you have ever meditated in a group. Then you can feel the energy. No? Alone, just saying the Om in a group, this resonating sound, it's like a vibration of energy in the room. Alone, this shows that there is something that's happening there. Even if you cannot really measure it somehow, it's something that's going to the root of the person, the root of the human being, that shows that we are connected together in this energy. And using the collective idea of bringing this energy to the surface could help us to get rid of a lot of negativity. And so I do agree that this too can be and should be something that we integrate in our daily life, because we were given art to be able to enjoy things. So human beings are really good at making art, and art brings us joy, and then it gives us good moments. So why not use that to create good energy and create change? So I do agree, it is.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we're leaving it for today, and it was a rich conversation. Thank you very much, and I'm already looking forward to listen through it and digest it a little bit deeper. Do you have anything that you feel like you want to add now in the end, or any kind of conclusion that came to you during the conversation?
First of all, just thanks for asking me to do this, because I noticed there's so much deeper stuff that I would really want to talk about and go into. And it was nice that you asked me these questions, because when I started to answer them, I was on the surface, and then it got deeper and deeper. And for me, this is a sign that we human beings need both. We need the surface level and the deeper level. And if we manage to integrate both levels in our daily life, then we will get the most out of life. And so thank you for showing me this again through your questions, because I realized this in myself, and I think it would do us good to not just remain on the surface, but to go deeper. Yeah.
Thank you, Collett.